Hello, and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And today I am welcoming to the show all the way from Toronto, where it looks super chilly out there. And it is François Gouelo. Welcome to the show, François.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And
No,
love
thank
the colors, by the way. Super colorful. More so than me. I'm all in blue, all in navy, and cold.
Well, and just looking at your window, I'm just like, I can just feel the
Yeah,
iciness. So, but this isn't going to be an icy conversation. It's going to be a fun one, actually. I'm really looking forward to getting into this with you, Francois. You are the co-founder and CEO of Enso Connect, which is a hospitality technology platform where you help property managers scale exceptional guest experiences in the fast-growing vocational rental economy. I love this bit. You were recognized on Forbes 30 Under 30 in Toronto, and you combine product thinking, AI, and operational insight to transform how hospitality teams manage guest journeys. It's all about the guest, really, isn't it? It's all about the customer at the end of
100%.
the day. You founded this company though, right in COVID, like pretty much at the start of COVID. That sounds like that's an interesting journey in itself in terms of what a time to start a business when the world's essentially shutting down. But Enso Connect, it enables property managers to streamline operations while maximizing revenue per guest through AI messaging, digital guest portals, and automated experience management. And from what I understand, your work sits at the intersection of hospitality, technology, and experience design. And yeah, you help operators move beyond simply adding listings to building memorable stays that scale. And I guess what I've researched about you is at the core of your approach is a simple belief: great hospitality systems don't replace the human touch, they amplify it. And in a world
That's
that's
correct.
changing so much from an AI and human touch, the human touch is so important. Last but not least, when you booked in for the pod and I asked you what's one unique insight or lived experience when it comes to life, leadership, and or business, you said every problem has a solution. Love
Yeah.
that. I'm going to hand it over
My
to you.
motto.
You can start wherever you like. But yeah, maybe you start with every problem has a solution. I don't know, but I'll leave it over to you.
For sure. Well, I guess, yeah, I'll start with the every problem has a solution part. I mean, you pointed out, we started this business just around COVID. Probably feels like the worst time to start a hospitality or travel related business, but every problem has a solution. And quite frankly, it was actually the best time to start a business because and specifically in that space because everyone was feeling kind of down. No one really knew what was going to happen to the travel space, how it would pick up again. And so you just start seeing all of these rooted issues in how people are managing vacation rentals, hotels, other types of accommodations. And it became just very evident that the world we were headed in was going to change. Digital experiences were going to be a big part of this. AI was maybe not front and center for many just yet, but transformer models and the papers were already out. There was just a natural wave to go out and solve that problem, and certainly couldn't have done it with the amazing team that we've built. So the model stays the same. I have it hung somewhere in the office where, yeah, every problem has a solution. I think maybe a cheap way of me getting out of some of these problems, where I could just say every problem has a solution. But it's also a very, yeah, true thing that just guides us every day.
Have you always thought that every problem has a solution? Like, were you taught that? Like, where did that come from? Because it's such I was saying to you pre-show, right? Like, the amount of times people have come up to me, staff where at times when like they've just thrown a problem at me. It's like, so what do you want me to do with that? Like,
Yeah,
it's always like, there's always a solution to a problem, but quite often we get so caught up in this fear and this like, no, it's dire. It's like the world's falling apart. The world's ending. It's not.
percent. Well, I think that the biggest thing is, whenever you feel like there is a problem you need to solve, and you feel a bit overwhelmed, where you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to solve this. This is too hard. You start breaking it down into smaller problems, and then you realize, well, I can fix this, or I can build this, or I can solve for that, and slowly the pieces of the puzzle start to come together. One unique example I love to give is when we first started. So we serve vacation rental operators, meaning people who are on Airbnb, Vrbo, Expedia, Booking.com. And so the natural thing as a technology company is we need to integrate to Airbnb in order to get information and so on. We go to Airbnb, we message them, no response, and we're like, well, how are we going to start a company if we can't even integrate to like the
Yeah.
ultimate platform for vacation rentals? We knock on their doors at their offices in Toronto. They tell us, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" We're trying to explain what we're building. They're like, "Yeah, we're not interested." And I'm like, "Okay, well, this is going to be really hard." We break it down. We end up finding an API key, which is effectively the sort of technical code, if you will, that you need in order to access Airbnb information. And we found it on Reddit. So we're really happy because we're like, this is great. We're going to be able to figure this out, build something. And we build it. 3 months later, Airbnb shuts it down, obviously, and we're back to the drawing board. Slowly, we progressed. We just built different systems. We tried different things. We eventually got. I mean, it took us 3 years, but 3 years later, we're officially integrated to Airbnb, and we're a partner of theirs. And it's just this sort of natural evolution
Congratulations.
of thinking, yeah, we're never going to be able to get it to every problem has a solution. Let's just break it down into smaller bite-sized problems that we can tackle. So I think that's just a guiding spirit for how we build at Enzo.
Yeah, and it's also for me, it's just like not taking no for an answer. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
when someone
great.
shuts you down, it's like, all right, well, then this is the time to adapt or look into, well, why did I get a no? What do I need to
Yeah,
shift? What do I need to do differently?
yeah,
Because it's like the brief is never the brief, is it? Like you'll
yeah.
have a conversation with somebody and they'll be like, you'll get a brief on something, but it's like, hang on, like you need to unpack it, like delve into it more. And it's like, I always play around with solution finding. You're almost on this, you're finding a solution to a problem, but the problem is never going from A to B to solve it because
100%.
you hit another roadblock.
Yeah. If you take a step back and you kind of look at the journey, it always feels, you know, like a straight line from where you
Yeah.
started to where you're at. And then when you actually think back at every month, every week, every quarter, whatever you might look at, it's just this ongoing up, down, up, down. And I'm sure it's on a daily basis more than just a quarterly basis. Getting used to that and just realizing grit is probably your best way of winning is just don't give up, as you pointed out. Just keep going, keep pushing. And if something doesn't work, learn from it and then adapt and just as long as you have, I think, a clear North Star that is in tune with reality, then nothing can stop you. And
No.
every problem has a solution. So that's it.
Yeah, totally. I love it. So tell us a little bit more about Enzo Connect. You've been running you founded it in 2020. Sounds like
Yeah.
you are, you know, you're hugely successful. Like, and obviously you started in COVID. A lot's changed since
Yeah.
COVID. I can't believe it was 6 years
A
ago
ton.
now. And like you're obviously a tech platform. AI is revolutionary. I mean, AI has been around for a very long time. But you would have seen some noticeable changes and I guess evolutions of your own business in the last 6 years in terms of
Absolutely.
when you started it. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I actually started this out of college.
Mm.
So it was an accident. I wasn't really supposed to start a business. I was supposed to get a job and be a software engineer and actually make money to begin with. And really it was by accident. So what ended up happening was I was at the University of Toronto. I was studying computer science, cognitive science, focusing computational linguistics, which sounds really cool. But basically it just means before ChatGPT was cool, we were studying other types of models, and then everything we learned was kind of thrown out the window that final year. And they selected 20 students to come up with an entrepreneurial solution. And you would build a business case and you would build a product or a small proof of concept. And at the end of that course, you would win $10,000, which in university dollars is like winning the lottery.
I
So
was about to say.
I was basically not focused on anything else. Didn't go to any of my other lectures, just focused on that and had a really good time building things. And the first weekend of that course, my best friend calls me up and says, Francois, you're French, you're trying to become Canadian, you don't know how to ski. We're going on a ski trip. So very, very last minute, we booked this vacation rental on some guy's website, 4 hour drive from where I lived at the time. And we get there, we get this long paragraph with all the instructions. We obviously don't read it. And then we get messages throughout the stay that we don't read. And the key was frozen under the doormat. The heating system was per room. It was probably buried in somewhere in that information. We were just going back and forth with the host trying to get quick information. How do you get pizza delivered in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
And, your classic sort of 20-something-year-old questions when renting a chalet. And then 5 days after checkout, I get a text message saying we left one of the windows open in the kitchen. Kitchen pipes froze. We owe him $5,000 and he's sending us to small claims court. So now I'm a bit anxious because obviously we were sure that we closed everything, but we also didn't actually receive checkout instructions. I mean, it was probably our fault for sure, but although hopefully I don't say that. And I remember coming back to that course the next week, and the professor said, make sure to come up with a problem, not a solution. Meaning, don't try to solve something that you think should be solved, or something that's really not necessary. Solve a real problem. And I had a $5,000 problem I needed to solve, so I figured, you know what, I'm gonna focus
Oh
on
my
that.
god, that's
And that was really the birth story of it. We built so many different little proofs of concepts and put a little business case together. We won the 10 grand, and then I started a master's of entrepreneurship in the UK. And and during that master's of entrepreneurship, it was very academic. So it was very,
can I just
yeah,
stop
tell
can
me,
I
tell me.
just pause you there for a second? Because you've
Yeah,
jumped from "Here's a real problem," right, into then and
yeah,
then you went, "But the real problem," so you've got me on, like, the edge of my seat because you've got,
yeah,
you've had this host contact you saying you've left a window open.
yeah.
Can you be explicit in terms of the real problem that you decided you wanted to solve? What was it? Was it to do with the communication with the host? Like, what? Like, obviously, there was a $5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it was a bit, it was multifaceted in the sense that, first of all, he had sent a long paragraph with all the instructions for checking in, but he had barely sent any communication after that on what to do, where to stay, and so on, or how to check out, what to do with the heating system for each room. So there's a bit of a communication issue with this host who was managing probably 30, 40 different units, so quite a busy man at the time, and Airbnb took our side. Airbnb was very clear that if you don't communicate with your guests exactly what they need to do, there's no liability to the guest. So
That
in a
makes
way, I kind of felt bad for the host, because whether we did or didn't leave the window open, whether it was the cleaners afterwards, whatever may have happened, you know, there was clearly a communication issue between
yeah,
myself as the guest, or my group as the guest, and the host. And I felt like this could have been solved. Being in computational linguistics, chatbots were a big part of the conversation
yeah,
at the time, and so this was rudimentary. The other factor behind it was the fact that the check-in experience was so muddy. I mean, the keys being hidden under the doormat, frozen under the doormat, us not getting instructions that it was under the doormat, so waiting outside, calling him. This whole experience, which could have been quite seamless,
I was
to be
about to
frank, and
say,
a
yeah,
beautiful property, as well as just the fact that we had paid just as much as the hotel. Peak season, you get
yeah,
better rate. It's
yeah,
better rates for the operator, and so you just start to realize, are you just managing a house, or are you running a hospitality business? And I think Airbnb at the time was kind of at that intersection of, we're actually creating hospitality experiences. It's not just a random
no,
couch anymore that you're renting out, since it was a touchless experience, or sort of a contactless experience. So how do you bring what Airbnb's essence originally was, which was this sort of community and traveling like a local, into a world that's becoming digital, but with very fragmented systems that effectively affect the guest experience? So that was the original premise. Where we are today, we're still solving that problem, but the path to that has been, just so windy, is
yeah.
what I would say.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's great. Thank you so much for explaining that because it makes sense. And so then I'm going to bring you back to then. So then you go off to,
Yeah,
yes, you're doing your master's in entrepreneurship through the
that's right.
UK. Yeah.
That's right. So I went and studied at Cambridge. I was sitting in this classroom. They were teaching about, how to build a company, what to do, what problems to solve. And by then, I'd already kind of done this business case at my previous degree, where I was like, well, I'm kind of skipping some of these lectures. Like, I kind of went through this already, and so I decided, partially potentially because I was bored and it was COVID, why not actually try and build this, and see if someone would pay me for it? And a few months later, we landed our first customer, and I was shocked. I was shocked that someone would pay me for this, broken software that I was still trying to fix up. And then I stumbled into to the industry, and realized this is a $5.5 billion market. It is massive. There
Yeah.
are millions of vacation rentals globally. The way they operate is all fragmented. And if you think about hotels, it's so much more standardized. They go through educational
Yeah.
programs, they have
Yeah.
schools to teach how to run a hotel. Vacation rentals, it's take a property, put it online, and run a hospitality business however
Yeah, I
you
wouldn't have
think.
a clue. Like, there's the amount of
Yeah.
times where people have said to me, "Why don't you put your place on Airbnb when you go on holiday
Yeah.
or whatever?" Too hard basket because there's no
Yeah.
way I would know how to even
Manage
like,
it, deal with it, exactly. But it's
but
actually really easy, and the technology has made it even easier, to the point that the industry isn't, I don't want to say no longer, because a big chunk of the industry are still hosts and so on, but it's becoming more and more professional. So you're seeing companies manage vacation rentals. We work with a few operators down in Australia, B&B Made Easy is one of our favorite customers out there. Noble B&B, another one. And these guys manage 200, 300 vacation rentals in their communities, make sure that the owner relations are good, the community relations are good, while also creating a basket of travel inventory for people who want to explore different places. And it's a really unique space to work in. To be clear, how I got into vacation rentals beyond the issue that I had was also a more of a statement from my dad, who told me, he told me, make sure that whatever you work on, that it's something within an environment that you want to work in. Meaning, when I was young, I really wanted to open a restaurant. I'm going to take a very different turn here. And I remember my dad said, you have two options: either become really rich and open a restaurant, or go through the best schools and learn how to cook and work your way up. And I thought, well, I'd much rather be rich and just open a restaurant. Sounds so much more fun. And so I looked up degrees, what was the highest paying degree? And the number one was nuclear engineering. And I really liked physics. My dad says, you really want to work in a random nuclear plant somewhere in France or wherever. And I was like, yeah, good point. Second one was petroleum engineering. And he said, do you really want to work in the Gulf of Mexico? I was like, fair enough. So the third one was computer science, computer engineering. So that got me into technology to begin with. And that same thought sort of applied when I built Enso, which was, do I really want to be in the travel space? And the answer was obviously yes. I mean, that's like the best thing to do, is to be able to
Yeah,
travel and meet people all over the world.
100%.
So kind of intersected different easy passions, I would say, if that makes sense.
I love it. What about the cognitive science piece angle? Like you mentioned that before, that as part of your degree, and obviously a lot changed, obviously with AI coming in. I mean,
Yeah.
for it's like how much of that is applicable to what you do today in terms of, and I'm probably going completely off kilter here, but like
No, you're good.
cognitive overload, like just cognitive, like in terms of like, I don't know, lots of different things, but from a cognitive science perspective,
It's
yeah.
cognitive science. So I had a phenomenal professor, John Vervaeke. I attended every single one of his lectures, and even one of the classes I went twice because of how fascinating this professor was. He actually made it on the Lex Friedman podcast recently. Quite an interesting one. And so cognitive science is kind of the intersection between philosophy, psychology, neuroscience,
Yeah,
artificial intelligence, computer science. It's different. It's really this very blended space. Some take it a lot more in the philosophy context, some take it a lot more in the biology, neuroscience context. And I took a very sort of broad approach to it. It got me to touch at so many different subjects. Lots of lessons learned. I would say I would attribute the sort of every problem has a solution to that,
yeah,
to those courses, realizing that, there are different ways of interpreting information.
data.
One of the exercises I remember the professor sharing was the definition of intelligence, and this whole lecture on why we may be smarter than an ant or why we may not be smarter than an ant, and just realizing that the models that you've made in your head of how things operate, if you just take a step back and rethink the assumptions, sometimes the problem that you're trying to solve is actually completely different.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely been a lot of application for that in how we run the business and how we think. I don't know if I've made that much use of the degree since, but
No, it makes
um,
complete sense to me
yeah,
because it's exactly what you're talking about, which comes right back into even around like, data and the human touch. Like obviously there's a science and there's a human
there's an art.
element to
Yeah.
this. And obviously, you've created a tech platform, if you like. It can never replace the human touch.
100%. It can only, I think, I speak to property managers, vacation rental hosts every day. And it's interesting. I had the first time, so I run this exercise whenever we get on a call with a prospect. And I always say, on a scale at the end of the call, I always say, on a scale of 0, don't ever call me again, and 10, sign me up right now. Where are
I
you? And
love
for the
that.
first time, I had someone say 0. And I was shocked because usually people who aren't interested, they'll say 5, just to kind of avoid the sales prospecting that happens. This person said 0. And I was like, well, tell me more. Tell me why. Why 0? I mean, this is like the final chance I have with you before I can never call you again. And the big realization was, they couldn't convince themselves that AI would replace their staff, and that it would do some of the jobs that they were doing. And it made me realize that it isn't about replacing the human in hospitality. It's about just efficiency, about getting
100%.
rid of the mundane and allowing you to get back into what hospitality is about. And so my follow-up question to that individual was, Do you call every single one of your guests? He was like, no, I don't have time. I said, well, imagine you could, instead of answering Wi-Fi questions and where's the key and, oh, is there a good restaurant nearby? What if you could give him a little call and say, hey, how's your trip? Got him to realize like there's a lot of wasted inefficiencies, a lot of inefficiencies that are happening in hospitality every day. How executives in hospitality companies adopt technology is going to be very telling of who drives the human and who doesn't. And I also think that there's a space for hospitality that doesn't involve humans as well. Business travelers and other types of individuals who just in and out, just want a place to sleep. So there's a broad range of where the human aspect can play beyond being available 24/7 as a human, if that makes sense.
No, totally. It's where the human can be dialed up and where the human just needs to be dialed down. Like it's kind of like,
That's right.
and I've been thinking you would agree with this from a team perspective as well. And like even just what you were talking about there, there's two types of a team now. There's the agent, AI agent, and then there's actually
Yeah.
the human. And so it's when is the agent leading and when is the human leading. But it's this orchestration of the two coming together now. And you would be seeing more and more of that, especially in what you're doing.
Absolutely. And another decent example for this, I would say, is if you ever go to a restaurant in France, where I'm originally from, the service is always categorized as fairly terrible because they're quite rude and they just serve you quickly. The definition of a bistro in Russian, the word bistro means fast. And that's why it was called a bistro, it was quick cuisine and just here's your
I didn't
food,
know
move on.
that.
Yeah, bistro means fast in Russian. And whereas if you go in North America, you haven't even had a bite and they're already coming up to you and say, "Oh my God, how's your food and how's everything?" And you're just like, "Oh, it's too much. Leave me alone. Why are you in my space?" And so sometimes hospitality is about anticipating those guest needs without being in their face, without necessarily even being present, but just being able to add that touch of personalization from just the clouds, if you will, and the guest feeling appreciated that way. So that striking that balance is a very brand dependent initiative, and I think technology can help swing the pendulum one way or
Or
the
the
other
other.
way. That's really where we're headed.
Absolutely. You've got such an amazing energy about you and like listening to you and just
Appreciate
the
you.
way you talk, like you're so like enthralled in what you do. You love your
I love it.
business, you love your industry. Like I love talking to people like you because it's just like it just shines through, right? So like even when
Yeah,
you're doing a sales call or whatever, you're so passionate. What,
yeah.
how, like, and sorry, so you're all that, but you also talked about that Enso Connect. It was like, you've had the windy road. It's been like a non-linear path.
Yeah.
And obviously the problem problem solution we were just talking about before. But what keeps you going? Like what keeps you energized on the hard days as an entrepreneur, co-founder? Like what keeps you lit
Um,
up?
Unreasonable, I don't know if this is the right word, but definitely just being focused on achieving a goal that I will continuously push back. Meaning, I've created a goal for myself for this week that sets a goal for the month, that sets a goal for the quarter, that continues towards this. And once I've achieved that goal, there's always the next goal and the next, and so it's to a certain extent feels like a treadmill, but that actually, or a race, because we're not moving in one place. We're just constantly adapting to what comes next. It's not a financial thing. It's not you know a change in the market. It's, I think, just this idea that there is a company that will digitize and monetize experiences for guests in hospitality, and that will be us. And that will be us globally and across every hospitality brand. And to assume that we will do this in the next 365 days is naive. So put a 5-year plan and let's see how we build towards that. And then 3-4 years later, you actually get there and you're like, okay, so how do we get to that next objective and that next objective? So I think it's just ignoring, yeah, focusing strictly on that end vision, breaking it down into smaller problems and just moving along the way. Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer for it.
No, that's a really good answer because it's just like keep going and keep like
Yeah,
focusing on the problem in front of you, not looking too far
yeah,
ahead, but having that North Star there
yeah.
in
It,
terms
it sounds it sounds sorry to interrupt. It
no,
sounds almost arrogant to say, but it's ambition in a way, and there is no failing. So there's not even the concept or the idea of not making it there. And that's what I mean by like unreasonable. It's an insane objective, and I don't know exactly know how we'll get there, but I know we will get there. And then I just convince myself and everyone around us that that will be the case, and we move towards that.
Yeah, and I
So
feel like
it's a bit unreasonable.
it's unreasonable, but I do love an ambition like that because there's one thing you called out. You said, like, it's not about, like, the money, like, but at the end of the day, that's obviously going to follow. Abundance always
For
does,
sure.
but it's this mission that you're on and the impact you wanna make in the industry you're in. I
Yeah,
mean, that says everything, right? But I also feel like, and I'd love your thoughts on this, as leaders and, especially as entrepreneurs, that, it's that innate inner, you just know. It's like intuition, it's gut, it's like, you can have all the data, all the science around you, but there's when you know something innately and you don't know how you're gonna end up there, but you just know.
yeah,
It's having the ability, comes right back to grit, but it's having that ability to keep walking, keep, the fear of the unknown, being open-minded.
absolutely, absolutely, and no regrets. So that's the other thing is I cannot afford to regret not having tried my fullest. So put every single minute, hour, and the fact that I'm younger than maybe some of the competition, or I might not have as much funding, or I might not have the same team, or whatever it might mean, means so what else can I do to have a competitive edge against any other player in the space? And that is just to just do everything I can and have everyone else do everything they can to get to that objective, knowing that whether we make it or not, if you look back, we did absolutely everything we could to get there. So a balance between grit and no regrets. Yeah,
Beautiful. I love that. Do you switch off? Do you ever, like, just have a bit of active recovery? Like, I know I asked you when we
after
met a
that.
few weeks ago and I was like, "Do you ski?" And you're like, "No." And I'm like, "What?" I think pretty sure you said no. "Do you ski
No,
now?"
that's
"No."
key.
And I was like, "Oh
No,
my
still
goodness,
don't.
okay, yeah." There's a lot of people I've met from Toronto or in, crazy snow places that just don't
That
ski. And
don't
I'm
like the
like,
snow.
whereas Australia has not great snow, and yet, like, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I love going skiing overseas." But,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you
No.
keep the fresh perspective? So coming right back to the answer to my question around this problem solution piece, like, and also from a cognitive load perspective, when you are overloaded or exhausted, and like, as a founder, as someone building, scaling a business and continuing to scale, I don't know about you, but there's times when I find that, like, my brain just can't, like, the solution to that problem is right in front of me, but because I am so overloaded, I'm just like, so how do you keep the fresh perspective going? Like, what do you do to make sure that you can keep solving all those, problems in front of you?
Yeah. Keep it maniacally simple is the first thing I would say. I have a tendency of making things a bit more complicated than they need to. And then I think that's when you start to get a bit overwhelmed and you go back to the basics and you're like, what am I trying to do? Well, I'm trying to do A, B, and C. Okay, so does any of this work fit within A, B, and C? And you start scratching things off, realizing it has no impact. There's a great book called Buy Back Your Time that kind of splits things into this quadrant of the things I love doing that make me money, the things I love doing that don't make me money, the things I don't like doing that don't make me money, and the things that don't like doing but still make me money. And you start realizing just focus your time on things that make you money and you love doing, and delegate everything else. Get
No,
a team around you that can work on some of these other pieces. Easier said than done. In terms of disconnecting from myself, I love riding my motorcycle. It's probably one of my favorite pastimes. It's such a like clear,
yeah.
I want to say music, but I know if my family listens to this, they keep reminding me not to listen to music while I ride my bikes.
I could
But it's just,
imagine you just
open road.
well, you're in full flow state, right? You're just like
Exactly.
like nothing's, well, you're letting off the
Exactly.
time.
That's right. So for me, that's a huge one. Spending time with the loved ones as well, is obviously a important one. I can't believe I said motorcycle over that, but they know that I love riding my motorcycle. and disconnecting. I mean, I don't know. I don't, and I'm okay with that. I think you have to be unbalanced in order to do awesome things, and it's okay to be unbalanced for a period of time. It's good to rebalance towards other things. You can't put 100% of your effort all into one thing, or you will burn out. But to do 90% into one thing, and then 10%, and then recalibrate that when things get easier, to spend more time with family or spend more time with friends. It just depends on the phase of life. But I today am extremely unbalanced, and I know it, and I'm totally fine with it.
Unbalanced. I mean, I don't like the word balance full stop because I just think it's like it's probably like what you're saying, but it's almost like work and then cut that off and then it's lifetime. And it's like that's
Yeah,
BS. Just not doesn't
yeah,
happen
yeah.
that
Work
way,
life
right?
balance for me is
It just
complete
doesn't.
BS.
I call it work life
Yeah,
flow, life work flow because quite often I'll be like, for example, I've had a problem that I've been wanting to like trying to solve all week, but I've just been sitting with it. I sometimes
yeah,
just let a problem, I put a problem in my head and then I just sit with it. And then last night I was at the gym and
yeah.
I was doing a workout and next thing I was like, bang, there it was. I was like, so that's
Oh,
work, but I'm at
yeah,
the gym, right? Like it's probably like when you're riding your bike, you're like,
yeah.
you're
Hundred
riding a
percent,
motorcycle, like all this stuff just comes to you
hundred
because
percent.
it's effortless what you're doing. Yeah, I don't like the word balance, but I like the idea of being unbalanced. Hinge, that's completely different.
Yeah,
That's a completely different word. One final question for you because this conversation has been a flowy one. I feel like we have just been talking for literally 5 minutes.
yeah,
That's nearly
yeah.
been 40
I
minutes
can't
right here.
believe
I
it.
said to you pre-show, it's only going to be a 30-minute conversation.
I love it.
Oh, actually, two questions. Enso Connect, like, what's next? Like, you're 6 years in, like, what does the next 12 months look like for you? You said on LinkedIn yesterday, you happened to pop up on my feed, I don't know, call it ESP, and you had a great post around, referrals and, this
Yeah.
comes back to business relationships, et cetera, and that you wanna do your ambition is 365 days of referrals. I'm not
There's
explaining it
a
very
lot of
well, the post, it
objectives.
was a great post, yeah.
I appreciate you. Yeah, there's a lot of different objectives that we're testing. I mean, we've been on a path of basically doubling the business now for 3 4 years straight. We have to do it again and at a bigger scale. That's really the goal in terms of this year and the business financially, if you will. In terms of where we're headed, and I'll be sharing about this, I think probably sometime this week, is this concept of a system of action versus system of record. It's a topic that's been wildly discussed in the sort of tech ecosystem, and I think we are approaching the reality of that. And just as a quick definition, the idea of a system of record is effectively this idea where you hold all of the data for a given industry. You're kind of the pillar of this data. Whereas the system of action isn't necessarily the one that holds the data, but it's the one that actually takes action on that data and is able to sort of close the loop and do the work on behalf of customers. I would say we're getting closer and closer to that vision. And I think this will be a catalyst of our growth over the next couple of years. So I'm excited to start sharing some of the results of what we've seen with
Yeah, that
customers in
sounds
terms of
amazing.
becoming that system of action. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. So real
yeah,
pioneer, frontier stuff, like, in terms of just, like, reshaping, what it looks like as well.
absolutely.
Amazing, and I'll look out for that post when you start talking more about it or getting it out there. But then final question, in terms of coming back to every problem has a solution, what would be a piece of advice or some words of I mean, you've shared so many words of wisdom, but no, actually, what would be a tangible let's use action. What would be an action you would recommend to any CEO, founder, or team that was seriously facing or in the thick of a big problem, had no idea where they were going, or what the solution even looks like? What would be the first action you would recommend they take?
Ground yourself back into first principles. Effectively, what are the either the metrics or the sort of aspects of your business that you're absolutely focused on, and why. And I think once you boil it down to a very simple statement, Not a long paragraph, not a vision document that's 3 pages long, one sentence, one paragraph, and ask yourself, but really ask yourself, is this problem directly tied to what I'm actually trying to achieve? Because I feel like a lot of times, 80% of the problems that we think are problems
They're
aren't even
not.
really real
No.
problems. And we're working on all of the small problems around, which distracts from the main issue. And if you focus only on that main issue, you'll create a new set of smaller problems around it, but you'll sort of jump leap. You'll leapfrog. I think that's the expression in terms of your own growth, your company's growth, your team's growth. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things to realize and to make happen as a
Agree.
business owner,
Quite
you
often the
know?
problem's staring you in the well, solution no, sorry, go back to solution finding. Quite often the solution is staring right at you, but because you're so fixated on everything else around it, you just
Yeah.
miss it. And so there's your opportunity. It lies in itself. Oh my gosh. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Francois. I've loved having this conversation with you. How do we find out more about you? How do we find out more about Enso Connect?
Yeah. So, I mean, myself, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always posting on LinkedIn. I think it's linkedin.com/François Gouelo, if I'm not
I've got your
mistaken. And then
details. Yeah.
perfect. And then our website is ensoconnect.com, ENSO, not Z. And I mean, if you're a vacation rental manager, you're managing vacation rentals, Airbnbs, and so on, feel free to reach out. Work with over 50 something thousand properties globally, 50 something countries. So more than happy to connect and share more about where we're headed.
I love it. Enso Connect. Where did that name come from, by the way? Just out of interest quickly.
Very quickly, it is a symbol of Zen, a Japanese symbol of Zen, and every single company in this space is called B&B something. Thought I'd do something a bit different. It's the design of an Enzo is on the cover of a book called The Lean Startup, and there's a whole story behind that that I'd be happy to share another time
Yeah,
as to why I
awesome.
named it Enzo. But yeah,
I was
symbol
going
of
to
Zen.
ask you that earlier, but anyway, oh gosh, that's a part two. Thank you so much, Francois. I'm going to let you get back to the rest of your evening. I know you've got a bit more to
Thank
do
you.
tonight, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the show today. So thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.